Hi, this is your math coach, Howie Tutman, presenting What Math Should My First Grader Know? I've recorded videos in the four domains, or groupings of standards, in math for first grade. This video is the first of 6 videos in the number and operations grouping. The video is about counting to 120. If you have any questions or comments, please email me at hrtutman@gmail.com. The complete text of the standard that this video is based upon follows at the end of the video. So one of the goals of this standard is to have first graders be able to count to 120. So what we have here is a traditional number grid. This particular number grid goes from 1 to 100. What you can do is on these number grids, especially if you're going to be making it, you could start it at 0 or you could start it at 1. And my suggestion would be that you can extend this so that basically it would go all the way to 120. The other thing that you might want to think of doing is the digits could start on the bottom because we have the students counting up as they go along. And when you think of it, if the students are starting on this first row with your numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, as the numbers are getting higher, the numbers would also be getting higher on the number grid itself. So it's just a thought if students are having a problem trying to understand, well, my numbers are getting higher, so wouldn't I go higher as opposed to as my numbers are getting higher, they're actually getting lower on the chart. So it doesn't really matter. You can stick with one way or the other, and you can start with either 0 or 1. So basically, we want the first graders to be able to go along and read these numbers. And once we get to this second row, this is very difficult for students to sometimes pick up. After we get through 9, 10, then we're looking at 11, 12, which these numbers really don't mean anything to the students. And then even when we get into our teens, 13 through 19, the students first hear the sound of the ones, 13, 14, and their first inclination is to put that digit first. So what you might notice is students are going to confuse, for instance, 13 and 31, 14 and 41. So this is just something to watch out for. In some of your Asian countries, this particular row of numbers is much easier for the students to pick up because 11 might be designated as 10 plus 1, 12 is 10 plus 2, and so on. So we just have a little bit more of a challenge with our first graders to get through this particular row. And then once students get towards the end of the row, 18, 19, 20, then we want to make sure that they are following it and they're adding one more to 20 and they get to 21. But what you'll find when the students are first learning the order of the numbers as they get through towards the end of this sequence, it may be difficult for them to pick up and then go on to the next row. So it's just something to watch out for. And then I would go as far as the standards of first grade, not just to 100, but make sure that they can then go this next set of 20 numbers. And this also is a difficult jump, 101. And you'll notice for writing wise, sometimes students will write it as 1001 because they see it as the 100 and the 1 afterwards because they really don't have the understanding of place value yet. And as far as reading these numbers, this would be 101, 102, 103. Many times we hear students and adults read these numbers that are past 100 as 101, 102. But basically, the and is something that we want to save for when a student sees the decimal point. A decimal point will indicate that's when a student would say and. Since these are whole numbers, there are no decimals, we would read this as 114, 115, 116. So I would use this number grid. Once students have this down, what you could do is basically just put some of the numbers on the number grid and see if students can come up with, say, the next three numbers. So with 35, and then they maybe could write in the next numbers, 36, 37, 38. And we want the students by the end of first grade to be able to comfortably proceed from any number so that they're not going back, for instance, to figure out what the next number after 21 is, that they don't have to go back and count from 0 or 1 all the way to 21 to then get the next few numbers. So that's very important that they be comfortable with this pattern on the number grid. So for the part of the standard that the student needs to represent a number of objects with the written number, it could look something like this, where a student is actually looking at the real objects like blocks, or could be just on a piece of paper. So then the student would need to first figure out, okay, how many are there before they're actually going to write something down. Now, some students might count this first row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and recognize that there's 10 in the next row also, but some students may not at this point, so they'll need to continue counting on 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So they are needing to count, and then they'll continue their count, and it has to be accurate, and this might be a problem for some students. After 20, they move into 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. And you could ask your first grader either to write this number, or you can provide them with cards that have different numbers on them, and they would pick out the correct card. So for instance, one of the cards may say 29, and then some of the other cards will have different numbers, and they'll need to pick that out. So this would be one way of picking out the card. Once you know that they can do it that way, you'd want to ask them to actually write the number. So you'd want them to be writing 29. Okay. Then what you might want to do is you may want to add a couple of more blocks and see if the student can then proceed from 29 to 30 and then actually write 30, add another one, and it would be 31. You could go one step further. It's a little bit beyond the standard, but you could start at 31 and then you could go backwards and say, okay, if we remove one, then how many do you have? And now we might be down to 30. And then let's say we remove one more. What do we now have? So that's one of the ways we can be looking at this part of the standard. If you're interested, here's the complete standard that my Count to 120 video is based upon. Count to 120, starting at any number less than 120. In this range, read and write numerals and represent a number of objects with a written numeral.